The Landless People's Movement Party of Namibia says it is optimistic that it will do well during elections in Namibia next week. The leader of LPM Bernadus Swartbooi says his party is not promising Namibians what it can't deliver. International news editor Sophie spoke to Swartbooi.
Our party is founded on the basis of the land question, where we stand firmly for land and agrarian reform, so that the Namibians who have challenges in accessing land for agricultural purposes are given that land and that they produce on the land. We stand for urban land, where many Namibians are living in shacks without any security of tenure. We are also standing for mining land, which now has been given to the foreigners, and with Namibians having a little say over what happens to the mineral resources. So that is one component of our manifesto dealing with the land question. Then what is also important is that our manifesto speaks to the youth, and we are the only party that has developed a specialized or specific manifesto that deals with the question of young people. Remember, Sophie, that in this year's elections, out of 1.4 million registered voters, about 900,000 are young people 35 and below. So that's an important constituency that we are targeting. And with them, we are saying that 50% of public procurement must be given to enterprises owned by young people, and there are so many of those enterprises. We are saying that young people must be given special preferences to access agricultural commercial land. But overall, of course, we're also saying that young people must be at the apex of decision making, so that both in state administration as well as in political party activities, in parliament, in the local authorities, in the regional councils, that young people must constitute 71% of the decision makers that must occupy those strategic seats. And so, of course, in the third part, our manifesto speaks about rebuilding the Namibian economy to deal with structural bottlenecks that do not allow everyone to share equally in the wealth of our society. And one of the ways in which we are speaking of dealing with that is that 50% of the mines must be owned by the Namibian state, along the lines of the De Beers arrangements in the diamond sector, with the De Beers owning about 50% and the Namibian state also owning about 50% of our diamond wealth. Of course, we are not saying that's the perfect way, but that's, amongst others, a good indicator of where we should be. Then we are, of course, saying that the oil revenues, because we have discovered a great deal of oil in Namibia, that the oil revenues must be shared with society and not just to be absorbed by the state to do the normal things that the state does, to build roads and so on, but that because of the scale of the poverty and of the hunger of Namibians, that the oil resources begin to directly be transferred in a frontal attack on poverty to the people of this country, who now are suffering the worst famine that is likely ever to be recorded in Namibia.
How do you hope to implement all these promises when you've pointed out that there are challenges in that country? Are there resources to deliver what you are promising Namibians?
Well, that is why we are not promising a pie in the sky, unlike what other parties do. We are taking a practical approach to deal with the question of food hunger and to deal with the question of making land productive. We have said that we're investing 10% of the annual budget allocation to agriculture and to bring about agriculture to an amount exceeding 6% of contribution to GDP. Our agriculture at some point was about 10% or 12% of contribution that it made to GDP. It has deteriorated to about 6%, and that meant a huge number of people that were employed in the agricultural sector have lost a lot of jobs and therefore have become highly malnourished. So that's one. That is about an 8.9 billion annually in agriculture to get into irrigation, to get into greater production of maize and all the types of food that we need to sustain society. And the second way that we are looking at this is that we have to open up the fishing sector. Remember, the fishing sector has also been a target of a great deal of corruption by the ruling elite. That we open up the fishing sector and ensure that many of the young people and the companies they own are also able to be entrants in the fishing sector, which is now being kept hostage by a few elite, and the opportunities are there in the fishing sector, even in, for instance, in the culling of some additional species that are still not decided upon, but which we have through our studies uncovered could become great value addition and economic diversification instruments in that sector. And then, of course, for us, it is the land and therefore the construction of housing, where a huge backlog has confronted society, and that we can actually, with a remunicipalized approach to the housing challenge and the land challenge in urban areas, create a massive number of jobs throughout the country and also stop internal migration.
Let's look, as we work towards rounding off the interview, you are in government in 2 regions, and people would argue that if you are promising all these, why you were not able to do the same or to start in those 2 regions so that people can see that when you are in government in terms of the entire country, this is what you'll be doing.
You must rather ask to what extent we have been successful in doing this, because the records show that in terms of giving urban land, we have done it free of charge in the local authorities that we are controlling. We are still rolling out that program, including placing young people at the forefront as recipients and beneficiaries of free urban land. We have been at the forefront of providing significant amounts of communities within those localities with electricity and with water infrastructure faster than has been done in the past 34 years. We have also been employing more and more young people in the local authorities that we govern, instead of just outsourcing all of the work as has been the case. And we are still sharpening the capacity of local authorities where we govern to roll out more of those programs, so that local authorities are actually beginning to take more and more responsibilities, employ more and more people in their localities, and that we are, upon strengthening the local authority capacity, able to employ people within the territory of the local authority and have the money circulate in those areas. So we have a track record of already doing what we are saying at the level where we are governing. And of course, we hope that if we can have a federal system, that more decisions can be taken at the local level, which is not the case now.
Let's wrap up our conversation. You have a situation on the continent where opposition parties, when they get into government, they just become part of the system in terms of what the previous party did, corruption and, not delivering. And people get disappointed.
Sure.
How are you going to ensure that when you get the seats, or if you get the nod from the Namibians to lead Namibia, you deliver, and it's not business as usual, like we've seen in other countries, the excitement of bringing in a new government, and a year after, people are disappointed.
Sure. Well, part of the problem, Sophie, and you have been around long enough and you have covered a lot of countries where post-independent, post-colonial Africa has had the same problem of the ruling parties beginning to just administer the colonial state in character, which is called the free and independent state. So that problem that you're speaking about is a problem that the liberation movements have consolidated and which we must get rid of, as you are saying, quite urgently. one of the ways in which we believe that we can get rid of that problem of stagnation and not really transforming the post-colonial state is to actually bring in qualified young professionals that have a greater energy and a new and highly inspirational approach to public service, who are in their own way competitive and want to take African society and African states forward to compete with other societies around the world. So the important issue is to get the cream of society beyond political point scoring, to bring the best of the best within the party and to pull society together around a core value of saying we are in this together. Let's hold hands and build our society and deliver services. And that is really the transformative state that we want to create, but also to understand that we have to temper expectations and tell society that there are challenges, that not every promise that is made will be delivered, and not to raise expectations beyond what is measurable, what is achievable, and what is realistic. And that's why, as a party, we are saying land matter we can handle. We can create a transformed agricultural sector that feeds society, that exports the excesses that we produce, that we can build houses, give people land, build houses. We have the internal capacity, we have the resources, and that you start to provide water infrastructure and provide a better education system. And once you have those building blocks in place together with a decent healthcare system, you can then move society forward in the next election phase and then build on the successes that you have achieved in the first 5 years and move to the next phase in the following 5 years. This thing of promising heaven on earth to citizens while you know resource constraints are there, public debt is high, debts have to be serviced, interest of debts are skyrocketing. One has to be careful and responsible, and we think we are doing exactly that.